A lot of us harbor the desire to communicate with the dead, to get answers to questions that were left unanswered. Explained here is a guide that may help you to do so that you may be able to satisfy this desire. Can we communicate with the dead? Considering this as a possibility may be difficult for some. This, however, is not a concept. A lot of people are born with psychic abilities that enable them to communicate with spirits, while several others have claimed that they have effectively communicated with the dead, and that the dead have communicated with them in return. The medium of communication may vary from person to person, but several people say that they have definitely experienced some sort of sign as a symbol of communication from their deceased loved ones. Communication need not necessarily mean only talking to the deceased. Communication may occur through signs that an individual may have to read through to grasp, through other individuals who may provide answers that someone is seeking, through dreams, or through situations that eventually present answers. Sometimes, an individual may himself find the answer from within, without any external medium. A lot of you may have some kind of feeling that is trapped in your heart, a feeling that you may want to let out about a loved one who has passed. Perhaps you were unable to express yourself then, and you are regretting it now. Several others may have questions that are still unanswered by their loved ones who have passed, and they wish to reconnect with them and find those answers. And then there may be some who can't do without the guidance of their loved one who is no more. For instance, the death of a father figure who always gave the right kind of guidance can be very traumatizing. Until you learn how to move on and live on your own, you may want to engage in some form of communication with him for some comfort. Whatever your purpose, you may take a look at some of these ways of communicating with the dead. Whether or not you will be able to effectively communicate with them is not guaranteed. However, these paranormal phenomena have been experienced by some, with success. Disclaimer: this article is for informative purposes only and does not in any way attempt to replace the advice offered by an expert on the subject. The effectiveness of the following methods is not guaranteed. Ways to communicate with the dead. Communicating with the dead is no mean task, and requires you to put in a lot to achieve some success. As much as you wish it was as simple as making a phone call and finding out how they are doing, this isn't the case. A lot of concentration, attention and effort is needed to be able to effectively communicate with them. The first step in your effort is to believe that such a supernatural communication is possible. Unless you don't believe it from the depths of your heart, you are not going to achieve much, because even if you receive signs, you will fail to notice them due to your lack of faith. This concept of faith is applicable to anything you wish to do, and communicating with the dead is included in it. Then comes the intensity of your desire. You have to deeply desire communication with the deceased loved one for even a remote chance of success. You may be struck with intense emotions while trying to communicate, such as guilt and more possibly, fear. These emotions may create an obstacle in your endeavor to communicate. You have to allow these emotions to pass, to heal, so that you can reach out to the one who has passed. Once you have inculcated the above-mentioned steps, your desire for communication with the dead will be conveyed effectively. However, now you have to watch out for the signs. No deceased one is going to directly materialize and talk to you. You have to look for signs as answers to your questions. You may have dream visitations from the deceased, where he/she may speak to you. The communication may also be very subtle, which you may not notice. This is why you must keep your eyes and ears open. You may have a vision, or a passing image, or just some subliminal messages that you will have to decipher to understand how the deceased is trying to communicate with you. When you receive a signal of communication from the dead, it is time for you to make your move. Most often, you may have questions in your mind. You can write them down in your diary as a mode of communication to seek guidance from the departed. In such a case, you may receive your answers through dreams or other such media, or through someone who may give you an answer that you are expecting. Lastly, you may wish to communicate with the dead through a psychic or a clairvoyant. The methods in which they offer communication may vary. However, They do function as more effective media than yourself for this purpose. Just remember that when you communicate through such a medium, do not give out any personal information to the clairvoyant. They usually do not even require it. Also, use a personal detail that only you and the deceased were aware of, as a sign of authenticity of the psychic. As mentioned before, communicating with those who have passed is not simple, and requires a lot of time and patience. You may not receive communication from them for a long time after you express your desire. Then perhaps someday, there may be a sudden form of communication. The bottom line is, if you deeply desire it, don't give up on it. However, don't get fixated upon it either. Death and dying is an inevitable part of life. Sometimes, time answers your questions, and that is perhaps the best way to deal with your emotionally heightened state of mind. Psychics say that many times, the deceased do not respond to communication from their loved ones because they believe that it will make it further difficult to accept their death. Instead, they simply allow time to heal them and overcome their grief.